Good morning, everyone. Good morning. First of all, thank you, REVA University and Times of India, for inviting me here. And I'll try to give you, let's say, a picture of what I see happening in this world. And specifically, I've been with SAP for 19 years, and you see a lot of business and a lot of things which is happening and disrupted by technology, and I felt it is good to share that view and would be open for taking questions as well once I finish it off. So what is happening broadly is, and I'll categorize this into a few buckets. What is happening in an economy, which I see it from a tech side? What is happening in the consumer world? And what does it mean for the customers who are going to adopt this? Whether the customers is a large size customers or a small size customers. So what is happening in the economy is, I mean, I'm a part of SAP, and if you look at 10 years back, I used to be very, very happy when we used to release a certain product. We used to feel that our job is done when you release the product. Last 5-7 years, I think the things have changed. People are not interested in what you deliver as a product. The people think, I rather need a solutions, and I don't need. And the solution can be a mix of product, it can be a mix of certain things which is coming from your products, from different third-party product, how you talk with each other, and ultimately trying to find a solution for myself. In the last couple of years or 3 years, and maybe in future, what is happening is the customers are not even interested in solutions. The customers are really looking for outcomes. And when I say outcome is basically he is interested in what he gets out of it. Whether this is what I need and this is what I wanted. Simple example, I'm interested in my health. And I'm interested in what is the output for me from that health point of view. I'm not interested in generic solution which is given by certain FMCG and certain things which solves for a lot of people. I'm interested in personalized things for myself. And that's what you call as an outcome. Second example, which is, I think people relate this, I'm a movie buff. I love movies. And basically I watch every movie. I try to watch every movie because I just love it. But there are a lot of times where you go to a movie and then you realize that I shouldn't have been there. Why did I spend 3 hours? And don't you think, I always feel that the thinking of outcome would be better, because if you, let's go with an approach, if I don't need to pay for a movie, I pay for a movie when I go to a movie and I have few entertainments, few laughs, and based on which I pay for the movie. And that's an outcome for me. So I think if you look at the trend, what is happening, I think more and more world is moving towards an outcome-based economy. And that shapes a lot of stuff into product which you build and how you build it. That's the first thing which is happening in the nutshell. The second thing, which is key thing, which is happening is, I think everybody talks about it, and I think it's a reality, that every industry is getting disrupted. Every industry. You take it retail, you take it healthcare, you take it any business, it's getting interrupted. It's just getting disrupted. And if you look at from the past history, for last 40, 50 years, it's been the same. I think it has always been the case of technology disrupting those businesses. The difference this time is not whether technology is disrupting. The difference this time, it's the pace at which it's disrupting. And when I say with the pace is, let's assume a case where you feel that there are certain technologies will disrupt a particular business, and you start building those business in your facilities or whatever it is. And you just block it and you say, okay, after 12 months to 18 months, I'll come back with a solution. What happens after 12 to 18 months? The reality today is, in 12 to 18 months, what you're building is obsolete. Which basically means that you need to have that engagement to what you build with the end consumer in a direct interactive way from day one to what you're building. And that's a big thing which is changing. So the thinking generally as a process is, because of the pace at which it's changing, is basically you need to have that interactions with the customer or the consumer on a day-to-day basis to make those changes effective. And that is a critical component in the part at which it is important that the product which you build, keeping the end consumer in mind, is getting disrupted with technology. The second aspect is let's say, assuming we come from an ERP world. We're very well known in the ERP world. 10 years back, we used to feel our competitor is an ERP vendor. An ERP vendor, we used to feel this is our competitor. When you are in a, let's say, real estate market, like the chairman is, you always used to feel their competitor is someone in the real estate market. It's normal theory. But in the last 5 years, what has happened is, with the broad adoption of mobility, the mobile phones. I mean, just look at the magnitude. You have 7.2 billion people on Earth. Everybody carries 2 to 3 devices: a mobile phone, an iPad, a laptop, whatever you call, average. 21 billion devices. They start talking and interacting. They will shape what you will do in future and how you will act in future. So one big trend which is happening is the mobility piece. The second thing is the whole thing around the consumption. I can instantly get an access to what you require. I want an instant value out of the access what I have. And the third thing is, a lot of technology is getting cheaper. The sensors and all those pieces, which were a little bit expensive, are getting cheaper. With all this technology trend, what is happening is basically players which used to feel we compete with an ERP vendor competing with an ERP vendor, and their shell, they keep on increasing. So they are expanding their horizons. They feel that, okay, I was restricted at this place. Now, because of this technology, I'm able to expand a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And when you keep on expanding, and the same thing is happening in different industry. The same thing happens in an healthcare industry, and the same thing is happening in a software industry. Now, when both these are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, they intersect. They intersect. And due to this intersection, what is happening? There is a new innovation which is happening in between. Who would have thought that the largest footwear company in the world, is the biggest healthcare platform in the world? Now you see what I'm saying? The largest footwear industry in the world is the largest healthcare industry in the world. A largest hotel chain out of India is owning a hotel chain without having any, whatever I call the real estate with them. Or the largest, which I just love, is a largest social media company is having a content which is generated by you. So the things have become very, very different. And if people feel that they are safe in their part of the world, I can bet and tell you, you are not safe. If somebody feels I have built a very robust product, I'm telling you, there are 20,000 startups in India who is coming here to disrupt you. And that's the massive change which is happening. And that's why I love this beautiful space of I try to meet between 3 to 4 founders a week. And just gives a kick on what they're trying to do, and just fascinating on just with the use of the technology, they're trying to create a business model and disrupt something which was not possible in the past. And that's the power of technology. And I've been telling you, it is not one industry. It is across industries, and it will have, whether it is bioscience, biotechnologies, everywhere it will get disrupted. That's a point number two. So one is the economy, which I said. The second is around the technology, what is happening. Now the third aspect, which is important, which is your customer. Now when you look at the customers, let's look at the large customers. I mean, they're large. This world is run by big, large customers. Of course, you have a lot of small customers as well. Now first start with the large customers. Now we look at the large customers, which are Fortune 500 or big clients in India, which runs the country's GDP, which are really key for the success of this country, with the success of the industry and all this stuff. Now look at the scenario they are in. They are in a scenario where they have done their investments. They've done millions and dollars of investments. They have an existing business model which is running. Their core business which is running. Now the new world is coming, which I talked. Now they are in a dilemma. What do we do? Do I leave these investments? Go into the new one? Do I take a big risk of running which is existing core? Or go into a completely new one? And I think that's the world in reality at the big customers they are in. Where they actually want their existing core processes where they're successful to run in a non-disrupted, good way so that they have the cash cows which are running, but they also want to go and leverage a lot of these new technologies on the side so that they can create a new business model. And that's the third trend which is happening. I think a lot of this Gartner and McKinsey, they use different terms for it, but it's basically dual speed architecture or whatever you call two-tier architecture, what do you say? Which basically means is on one hand, I want one thing on one architecture to run at a small pace or a pace which is I can run my core businesses, I can run it non-disruptively, and I can just execute to what I don't have a fear. But at the same time, on the sides, I will leverage a lot of this new technology, whether it's artificial intelligence, blockchain, or the key technology which can shape the new. It can be HR, it can be the front end of the office, it can whatever you want. But those are the things also happening at the customer place. For small customers, it is actually a little bit lot easier to adapt it. Because large customers have the large install base and all those things, or large installations and massive investments which they need to take care. A smaller customer, it's much more easier to adapt. That's why it is, I feel, generally a very, very good time for the small enterprise to really take a leapfrog out of this equation. The fourth topic, which I feel it is very, very specific to India, and I think India is a very special place in this all things which is happening. And the special, why I say it is a special place is because generally if you look at from last 50 years of technology, always there are some kind of technology. I mean, in the 50s and 60s, it was industrial automation. Then you came to business process automations. Then you had internet coming in. And then you have a lot of the small innovations which came very fast, whether it is mobility, whether it is cloud, and all the stuff which is coming in. Typically, everybody follows that standard, right? I go from one step. If I want to go to the first floor, I go step by step I take 10 steps to go to the first floor. India is a very special, and India, a lot of the Asian countries are very special because I think they will bypass a lot of the stuff. So they will not go through the step 1 to 2 to 3, and they will directly jump from 1 to 8 or 1 to 10. Why? 1.2 billion people. A lot of them are young. Morning to evening, they play technology. They will dictate what you do. They will have a completely different way of living and adapting and using the mobile phones and all the stuff. Or they're using technologies, and they will bypass a lot of this stuff. And the same thing happens at my home with my daughter or my son. I mean, it's the same thing. I think I cannot, if I always go with my son and you're passing the toll, he always says, why I need to stand at the toll booth? He just says, why? Why can't we find a solution for it? I said, of course you can find a solution for it. You need to build a startup. Of course do it. I mean, he's sixth standard. I mean, but you just think that the people are thinking that if you can find a solution, I think that is the world India is in. And I think those are the things which will create a much more bigger impact in the years to come. So, and as I said to you, I mean, I will give some time, 5-10 minutes for the Q&A if it is fine. But the generic thing is, the world is moving towards outcome-based economy. People and the consumer gets more and more powerful. It is the end consumer which will decide. It is the end consumer which will decide whether you as a company are successful or not, and not really the company itself. If you are a B2B company, your job is not done when you sell your product to another enterprise. Your job is done when that person is giving that product to someone else who is an end consumer who will decide whether you are successful as an enterprise or not. That's point number one. Point number two, as I talked about technology, it is going to disrupt every person and everyone. Everyone. And point number three, which I said very clearly, customers will find the right ways of adopting it. There are a few customers who will form a very conscious path of securing their investments, but doing it step by step. You will come across few companies who will directly go and jump on the stuff. And I said the 4 point is India is very special. India will always bypass a lot of stuff and disrupt. That's point number 4. Before I close, I always say this, which I always tell to my son and my daughter as well. When he talks about this stuff, right, of why I stand in the traffic, why I have to do all this in the queue, I always tell this, India is so big. India has so many people, so many problems. I think everybody talks about problems, right? I mean, I come here at 7:30. I started from home from Whitefield at 7:30 because I don't want to be in traffic. So there is a problem which I know. It's a part of my life. And I always tell him the same thing. India is 1.2 billion people, a lot of problems, a lot of opportunities. Every opportunity is a new business model and a new startup. And that's the world we are in. And I think, I don't think it's a better time for India than what you can imagine. I think my grandfather used to say, I mean, we come from an entrepreneur family. I'm the only stupid guy who used to work for someone else. But he used to always say there are 3 things, right? In Hindi we call Najar, Khabar and Jigar. I don't know if you've heard about it. Najar, Khabar and Jigar. You know what the 3 things means? You need to keep your eyes open. I need to hear it well. And then you need to have the guts and the balls to just go ahead and do what you feel is right. So it's the time in India. Just be bold, just be bullish. I think you will rule. Thank you very much. Happy to take any queries or questions. I mean, if it is not, also fine.
Yeah, I wanted to ask whether you feel even more generic technologies like mobile systems, televisions and such are also going to become objective-based. Your opinion as such, not...
So what do you say, mobile and...
Like a mobile phone, it's mostly a whole set of mobiles. Apple means you get an Apple mobile as such. Or Motorola, you get the Motorola mobile, which everybody gets the same mobile, basically.
Yeah.
Are they going to become more custom-based, like a person who wants more data storage, they will be able to get the model built in that point?
I just have one simple thing, which I always tell this. I don't think what is existing today, which will exist in 5-7 years. I'm telling you, TV will not exist.
Okay.
My opinion. I'm telling my opinion. Now, don't take it. I think you see a lot of people who don't even use TV anymore. So you might use it for something else. But your traditional way of looking at TV and all those things will go off. And same will apply for, I mean, who would have thought 15 years back the mobile will have that much impact? It's not the mobile, it's not the phone which is creating that impact. It's mobile phone initially was for making phone calls. Now you do everything on that stuff. So you can argue, there are a lot of people who argue that the PCs will not be there and you can do all the stuff on the mobile. You can argue. But to answer it short, I think the way it is changing, there is nothing which is forgiven.
Okay.
So I cannot predict whether this will happen in 5 years or 7 years, but it will happen.
Thank you. That was mainly the...
Yes.
Hello, Anuradha from Envision, and we work in the mutual fund space. You mentioned a couple of things about technology, disruption, and how to be bold, and quite a lot of interesting things. So just curious as to how, with respect to SAP Labs, what is it, the plan or the roadmap in order to address and utilize these opportunities?
For SAP Labs, or what do you want to know?
SAP Labs.
But why you are interested in SAP Labs?
It's more because I'm sure with all this thought process, you would also be trying to, incorporate.
I think it's a very interesting question. I tell you why it is important. I think it's very important for a country like India, what SAP was trying to do for last 20 years. So if you look at typically when there are MNCs, like SAP was also coming to India in 1998, and there, when they came to India, the assumption was they want to come to India because they want to first cater to local Indian market, which basically means they, of course, have the global product, but how you customize those local products and all those things to an Indian market and meeting those requirements. And the second thing is they always used to come to India because there is a huge talent pool. But the initial assumption was always to do the work which nobody wanted to do elsewhere, and you can shift this work. Now, it's 20 years. I tell you, SAP Labs in particular is close to 9,000 people. It is second biggest R&D, and I stress, not R and D separate. I think it is research and development facility out of India. 9,000 people. It's the second biggest, actually the biggest outside of the headquarters. So what I mean by that, I'm telling you this is because I think the things are changing in a country like India, where it is not going to be just the talent, but I think it will be much and more strategic product development which will happen out of this country. And I think that is an important sign for a lot of the techies and a lot of the people who work in the tech world. Whether it is MNCs or India, I think India will play a massive role in defining what shapes in the technology world and which will disrupt certain technology. I hope I answer your question. Yes.
Hello, this is Ashish Jalan from Envision Financial Systems, Anuradha's colleague. My question is, what sort of skill sets any organization should develop, considering the future is very unpredictable, and based on the talk that you gave, it seems that everything is going to change at a pace which we can't imagine. So how should organizations invest in developing skills in people, and how do we give growth to the employees?
I have a different view on this completely, and maybe it is. I genuinely feel that it's not, I mean, you're completely right what I said. The technology is changing at a pace. Maybe in the past you can learn technology for a certain time and you can survive for next 3 years, 4 years, 5 years on the technology, and then you try to learn. I won't be surprised in future if this changes very, very fast. Maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months, maybe 9 months, I don't know. But I think the most important thing which I'm trying to tell, which people will differentiate you from others, is if you can create a culture of learning. I'll tell you why. Now, look at it. You hire 2 people from the market. And every company has a benchmark of hiring those people from the market. Every company has it. One guy takes 4 weeks to learn technology. Maybe. One guy might take 8 weeks to learn the technology. What's the difference? 4 weeks. Learning. the difference is not so much. I mean, it is 3 weeks, 4 weeks, everyone is good. It is just a matter of learning in the right ways. The difference is whether he has an attitude towards changing and learning again and again. You do this, now after 1 year, if you want to do this learning again, are you willing to adapt and change? I think the direction which needs to go in is whether you have a learning culture where you have an agility to make people learn faster and a process for doing it, and not really sticking to a particular way or technology. Today's, of course, you can learn deep learning, machine learnings, and all those stuff. But tomorrow, maybe there are certain things which will come where you need to adapt and learn. I think the culture of creating those things in the mind of the people, that I think that culture of learning, which will have a bigger impact, is much more than the learning of a technology itself. Technology learning, I feel it can be learned easily. I think this attitude, which is a different problem, and the learning, that's a bigger issue than the learning itself. So I will not specifically tell you because we don't know specific what you're talking about technology, but I think that's the bigger goal of creating those culture. And I think that is more important, I feel, in the current context than learning in one particular area.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm Sanjay John. I am from Express Sonic. My question is regarding that instant value expectations which you mentioned.
Yep.
By the end user customer, especially in the case of B2B. Now, generally we see that the revenue improvement as a quarterly affair. I mean, do you think that this is going to reduce to even a monthly cycle or even a less when you say instant value expected?
I think there are companies who are doing weekly. So you're telling monthly, there are companies who are doing weekly, and maybe to a certain extent on a daily basis as well. They just ship the code. They have a process where you just put the code and it is instantly available to the consumer or the customers. I can understand that it is much more easier in a B2C world. It's not so difficult in a B2B world, but it will be generally a direction which you go in, depending on how you go in. And instant value is the same. You completely understood it right. I think instant value is, I'm not willing to wait for 12 months, 18 month cycle to give a certain innovation or a certain topic. I think they want to adopt innovations as fast as you can give. And the successful companies would be the companies who have that process in right, who can deliver this on a faster basis. And I think in the past, the technology didn't used to allow it. Now it's possible with the consumption in the cloud. It's much more easier. You can just have one click on and you are just on, and you can just give those instant access to the people who are looking for. So I think, to answer your question, I think in the B2B world, this time will keep on shrinking. Don't know whether it is monthly, weekly, or daily, depending on how it happens. I think it will happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Last question.
Well, actually, time's up, but yes, we can take the last question quickly.
You can ask. Yeah.
The only question what I was supposed to understand from you is that, as you said, any startup which starts with a particular idea or maybe a problem-solving strategy, there's a time span of, for example, 18 months of time wherein he actually comes back and sees that the problem what he's trying to state or a solution what he's trying to pose is becoming obsolete. So what is the strategy what a startup would start with a vision that it becomes relevant even after quite a good amount of time?
So the problem will not, when I say it will become irrelevant means you need to you need to be understanding that there is a problem, and you know that the problem will exist for a certain point in time. And you need to be completely irrational in your thinking that I'm going to solve this problem specific. If the problem, let it be the smallest. I think there's a clear trend, even in the startup world. If you are able to identify a very, very small problem and you solve that small problem, there is a higher probability you will be successful. The problem is once you start growing, you just lose and you start going everywhere. So if you've identified the problem and it is a very focused problem, and you put an effort in solving that focused problem, there is a higher probability you'll be successful. And this problem will not go in 18 months. And that's why you feel it is a problem. You know what I mean? But the focus is extremely key and important, because I think if you don't have that, I think people lose it. Because people always start with something else, and then few people will tell him, and then he just migrates here, there, and he just loses the focus. I work with a lot of startups. I mean, I just always tell them, I mean, just identify the problem and just focus on that aspects. And if you believe, and you need to be believing it irrationally. I mean, where 10 people always say, I mean, you are stupid, but then you believe in that irrationally, and you're going to solve this. I mean, that's where the differentiation comes in. If you need to believe, and then you need to just push on this direction. And there are a lot of people to help and support. It's a good ecosystem.